young people, parents from black and minority ethnic backgrounds who are saying that they were way more likely, just under 70% more likely to get involved because it speaks to them as being a modern construct.
Okay.
I think if you sort of take your scout head off for a second and look at the swoosh logo that we've got in TSA at the moment, then I think if you don't know anything about us, you might make all sorts of interpretations because it looks quite heraldic. It might bring to your mind something from 12th century knights and all those sorts of things, rather than a modern youth organization. So that's what it's all about, really. And at the moment, some folk have seen a small amount of this, the logo bit. We're going live with our branding activity and our strategy to 2023 on the 15th of next month, and that's when
15th of
everyone will
May.
be able to see it all there.
Okay. Now, you might say yes or no comment. Is there any truth in this patent that's floating around on social media that says this is the patent of Scout Association, so it must be the logo?
We have registered a logo as part of what we're doing. And so people can draw their own conclusions, but it's just a logo, and we have to be really careful because it's not in the context of how we're going to present ourselves. And on the 15th of May, people will see that, and in particular, they'll see a much more confident tone of voice that we'll be talking about scouting from the Scout Association's perspective, and we'll be releasing all sorts of useful resources for people to use, including some videos that are really, I've seen sort of the initial takes of this that are spine tingling. They make the hairs at the back of your neck stand up, and really speak not just to those of us within Scouting, but also those who are without Scouting, and I think will really encourage them to want to join.
Talking of videos, can I say one of my favorite videos, well, two of my favorite videos made by the Scout Association is the one of the young girl it's the one of the young boy, and you think that he's going to be bullied or he's going to go up to no good, and then at the very end, it is a fantastic. If all our listeners will stick it up on our website again, that was one of my favorite videos, and I know exactly what you mean by ones that bring in the emotion. And I guess as well, you're going to be trying to attract more adult volunteers, Tim, because
Yes,
how many's on the
absolutely.
waiting list at this very moment in time in the UK?
Yeah. So the waiting list has been growing. We're on our 13th year of growth of young people and adults. But the waiting list, or as we like to sometimes call it, a joining list, just to make us feel better.
Joining us, yeah.
Yeah. But that's all in semantics, isn't it? Has grown, and so there's a lot of people who could join right now if we could have the capacity. But we have also grown a lot. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that we have got ourselves into some really difficult areas of deprivation. And that, in some sense, challenges us quite a lot because some of our systems and our assumptions are tested because there's very different environments. So I think what I would say is that our 160,000 volunteers, adult volunteers in the Scout Association, are doing a stonking job. They're really, really putting out all the stops, and that's been our thrust of our last 5-year plan that takes us to a month's time or so, where we've been focusing on growing Scouting by broadening the base. Based on our view, and I think it's a really good view that says if Scouting is good for young people, then it's good for even more young people. And taking Baden-Powell's original starting point, let's have people from different backgrounds and bring them together and see how much more you can do, that you're more than the sum of the parts. And my perspective as an adult in Scouting is that I've met people I would never have met through any other route, people who are joined by this common bond of how can we help young people to develop and grow and to change the world around them. And that's the common bond, not about where you live or what sort of job you do or what sort of person you are or your background. And that's a really interesting and powerful melting pot of human potential that we bring together in Scouting. We should never forget that.
Absolutely. Now, some will ask, with this new unveiling on the 15th,
Yeah.
will the uniforms change? Are we going youth club? So people come up with this topic all the time on social media.
Really? All right, excellent. No, there's no uniform change. being unveiled on the 15th of May. All we're doing on the 15th of May is we're doing a go live of the brand stuff so that we can just talk about scouting in a more confident voice, and also the details of our strategic vision, skills for life, that will take us to 2023. And that's been developed as ongoing from our existing strategic plan, and with a huge amount of input from young people and from adults across the association over the last, I suppose it's about 18 months now, maybe a little bit longer than that actually. So I think people won't be surprised, because if they look on the Scout Association's website on beyond 2018, so scouts.org.uk/beyond 2018, we've had for a long time the information that's there. We've had packs about and activities to do with young people to say, this is where we think it's going, do this and tell us what you think, and they've fed back to us. So I don't think there'll be anything there that should shock people, and I can talk a bit about that if you like.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. So these type of packs, these type of what I do love about Scout Association as well is you're looking outside the circle of trying to bring a parent in and go, here's the uniform, you're a scout leader, we need a scout leader. You're opening it up more in the UK, as in, and the people that's promoting it, of course, Tim, is the ambassadors. You have some big name ambassadors coming on board. Like, I would love to know how often you get Kate Middleton to be involved in her group. Like, she's a royal family.
That's great, isn't it? It's just brilliant. And we got a real range of people, and we're extending it a bit further, but we're very clear that this is to try and show people, unexpectedly, how scouting fits into other lives. And they're a genuinely great bunch of people who are honestly passionate about what we can achieve with young people. We met with them just before Christmas and sort of talked through what we're doing and what they might do for us. And the energy from them is quite astonishing, given that they're hugely busy people with huge commitments of their own. It's really great.
Well, I love the way Kate just got her hands dirty, got straight in there,
Absolutely.
and with all the cubs and everything, just
get on with it.
Get on with it.
Well, watch out. We'll see more of them all getting involved, which will be really great. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But I think, though, this sort of talking about the energy and enthusiasm, I think what I'm really pleased about is that we started looking at what we might do post 2018. So, when we come to the end of our current strategic plan, what do we do for the next strategic plan? If you're not careful, that can be quite dry, can't it? Strategic plans, oh gosh, yawn. But we've turned it into, what are the outcomes? What are we going to try and achieve with this? How are we going to do this? A load of activities for young people to do, which were fun and interesting, and gave us feedback about what was important to them. Lots of information from leaders and also people outside of scouting. This is really important. You can't just look inside. You do have to say, how do we attract people to be involved?
The outside, yeah.
And we had a absolutely brilliant activity at Summit 2017. 700 of our district commissioners, county commissioners, youth commissioners came together at Warwick University for the weekend, and it was one of the most astonishing moments of my life, because that's quite a hard audience. There's 700 people there who all know inside out what they're up to and what scouting's about. So you couldn't hope for a more critical audience that's going to understand what's what and what it's like on the ground and so on. And over that weekend, we dived into the areas of the current plan where we'd done well, where we'd not done so well, where there's more work to do, and where we might go for the future. And we genuinely together shaped what has become our Skills for Life program for the next 5 years, with some things that were really, I hadn't thought of. I knew there were some areas that really weren't quite right, and it crystallized in a way that is rare, I think, when you get that many people together and almost like one voice speaking on these various areas that need to be done. And having then tested that, the output of that with a pile of activities with young people and with adults around the UK, with thousands of people telling us what they thought, we've ended up with a sort of a number of top priorities that we're focusing on. And amazing section leaders is one of the key aspects of this. How do you get amazing section leaders? And at our peril, we fail to focus on the program, right? Program, what young people do, what a young person experiences in scouting is really, really important. It's the bedrock of what we do. And so we're looking at tackling all sorts of stuff. How do you make it easier for people to join us and for the recruitment process to work? How do you make it easier for adults to feel that they have the skills that they need to be amazing leaders? How do you make it easier for them in time-pressured lives to more easily deliver astonishing programs to young people, and to run those section meetings and activities and events? So there's lots of stuff to do, as you might imagine, in that, but it's a really focused thing. So we've come up with, broadly over the last few years, we've been looking at how we grow, looking at how we make an impact in the community, looking at how we make sure we're shaped by young people, and how we're as inclusive as possible. And that hasn't changed. Those 4 areas we're carrying on because we've done some good work, and there's even more to do. But it focuses down to 3 pillars of work: the program, people, and perception. So the program, how do you make it easier to do great things with kids? The people, how do we support these 160,000 adult volunteers and all our young people? How do you do that in the best way possible? Because without that, we can't do what we do. And the perception thing, which is really important to me, which has a sort of like a double-edged sword, because it's not just how we feel about ourselves and perceive ourselves, but it's how people outside us perceive us.
Yes.
And we can say as much as we like, we're inclusive, come and join us. But if people don't see that, then why would they cross the threshold? Which gets us full circle back to your question about our brand and how we project ourselves, and that's the reason it's there. It fits in with these strategic directions that we've been looking at and focusing with people over the last 18 months or more.
It makes it really interesting, Tim. I'm dying to see what's going to be unveiled now on the 15th of May. So the main emphasis we have to say to our listeners is that it's more than just this logo that's going to come out.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
that's right. And in terms of unveiling, I'm using Go Live because it's not like, I think everybody in the UK Scouting should know broadly what's in this, because they've all been voting on things and giving us their feedback and telling us stuff. So I think it's, we've got sort of 90% plus support for the areas of the plan from people. So it's really, really good. What people will find is they'll have resources, practical resources, that will help them, some video stuff to help people get into it and understand what we're doing, some practical resources to help them do some of the things. And I think for me, most important, there's 5 years. This plan is a 5-year plan. This isn't do everything in the next week. It's about 5 years of layering it in, because what we can't do is just completely, pull everything to bits. It's not what we're about. What we're about is building on the brilliant work that people do and helping to get even further together.
Now, you mentioned program. I'm going to ask maybe a quite difficult question. Scout Association of Northern Ireland have a section for younger than beavers called Squirrels.
Yeah.
Do you see that ever happening in Scout Association UK?
Well, what we've done as a result of the Summit 17 we had last year and the discussions with people is we're looking at what might one do to help people get scouting at a younger age than currently beavers start. And we don't know what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We genuinely don't. What we do know is that the values that we impart to young people and help them to understand and to uncover for themselves are really, really important for social cohesion and the future of society. Mm-hmm. We also know that the younger you start with young people, the more impact you can have in helping them to discover and solidify their values. So both those things are true. So the next question is at what point do you start? And we don't know the answer to that yet. There's some brilliant work that goes on in a number of places and a number of associations around the world that do all sorts of different things. So what we're committed to do is in the lifetime of our plan is to look at that and to work with our local scouting folks and to see what might work. So, and I'm really quite keen that we're very clear that we go into these things with our eyes open and our minds open, and not saying, we won't do this or we'll only do that. We need to do what works for people. One thing that I've learned a lot from my time as a leader, when I first became a leader, if we go back to the 32nd Oxford when I was first a scout leader, I'd spent all my time up until then in the 43rd Oxford, and I'd learned as a cub and a scout and a venture scout that the right way to do things. So I'd learned the right way to fold a tent, the right way to lay out a campsite, the right way to run a section meeting. Then I went to the 32nd Oxford and they did it differently, and it was a shock. It was a real shock. But I then learned very quickly that it wasn't wrong. It was just another right way.
Of doing things. Yeah.
One thing I've learned very, very quickly is that you can go to a group that's just down the road, just across the street, and they will run they'll run their cubs differently. They'll do their grand howl differently. They'll do their badge ceremonies differently. Doesn't make it wrong, but it's different. So there isn't always one answer for everything. but there are sometimes some common standards that work that help people. So we have to explore that, and that's what I'm committed to do.
So, would you be more comfortable in saying to him that this 5 year plan is more of a guideline for the next 5 years?
Well, it's a strategic plan. So yes,
Strategic
in that
plan,
sense,
yes.
it's got some way markers, and it says these are the areas that everybody says we need to try and do something in to try and help. But let's not pretend we can do it all at once. It's like a journey where you find your way from one thing to the next. There's an ordering to it. There are some things which make more sense, and there's been a lot of discussion inside the UK Association about how we ensure that we've got a really good digital base on which to build. And we've got some things better, some things not so good in the past, and we need to try and make sure we do things well for the future. We've got a brilliant chief digital officer now, and we had a really successful digital day at the weekend just gone. 100 volunteers from around the UK came together, many of them over 70% with a digital background themselves
Super.
professionally, talking about how we do things better for the future and all agreeing on the way we should go forward. So I think there's lots of things we need to do, but also an awful lot of support behind it and a good positive way forward.
Now, I've asked you about would you think of, or would not you just would Scout Association
Yes.
of think of dropping the age to squirrels? What do you think of the upper age group? Because personally, I always think that I had rovering, and I'm now going on 35 years of age next year, and I still consider myself a rover as well as a leader. Do you ever think that network over in Scout Association UK should be a longer age group? Because some people just don't want to be leaders.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So there's two things I think I'd say about that. The first is that we have rules in the association that allow adults who are leaders or section assistants, whatever they might be, to do activities as adults and get on and do it. And that changed about, I suppose, 12 years, 14 years ago or something, okay. When all our rules at that point were based around adults taking young people away, and didn't quite work when adults were going off together. Sometimes, I used to, as an adult, when I was a section leader, I would go walking in the mountains in winter to make sure I'd done things that were way more tricky than I would ever take young people. So I felt I was like a sort of step ahead, and enjoyed that. And as it happened, I had a sort of a ready-made group. I've got a twin brother, and my dad, so the three of us used to go backpacking between Christmas and New Year. So all that was really great. And we recognised that our rules at the time didn't make it easy for adults to do that. So that was changed and that was done. There's a sort of a broader question for me, I think, and that is that it's very clear to me that actually what Scouting, the Scout Association, is about is a charity that's about developing young people. And the development we do with adults is as a result of helping them to develop young people.
Yes.
And not to do other things, and for me as a leader through Scouting, I've learned all sorts of skills that have been brilliant and helpful for me in my job, and in other aspects of my life. But I learned them because it would help me to develop young people. And I think that's really important. I think that's why we have the Scout Association. It is about young people. So I think there has to come a point where we're saying, the reason we're here is young people.
Yes.
And that's what we need the adult workforce.
Yeah, and it is true. And you know what? There's thankfully, enough adult activities. Like the Gilwell reunion is growing year on year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure we won't go into that, but I'm sure there's plans of the Gilwell reunion in September already ongoing.
Absolutely right. Yes. Yeah, and I think there's lots of opportunities for adults to undertake activities together and to learn and grow together, which is fine. I think the focus is about young people for me.
Now, you must be attending the World Jamboree as well, Tim, next year. What are you looking forward to there?
Well, I think from my perspective, I've supported locally in Oxfordshire where I live, I think 5 or 6 Jamboree units from Oxfordshire that have gone. So I've helped with a bit of fundraising and done various things, sometimes more than others, depending on what else I'm doing. And for me, every time, just from that perspective, it's been seeing a bunch of young people who've grown together and know each other really well. So at the point they go to the Jamboree, they're so secure in their knowledge of each other that they are liberated to go and spread themselves around a Jamboree and meet as many people as possible. Because for me, I think the experience has to be that you feel so strong in your relationships and support as a unit that you can just afford to make the most of these sometimes perhaps quite mind-blowing experiences as you meet other cultures and other perspectives, and you're happy to explore that. So for me, it's watching that happen that is just astonishing. So from my perspective, with a load of UK scouts going, my sense will be that I'll spend some time making sure I meet all of the section leaders and the units that are there, and to say thank you to the leaders in particular. I'm getting a chance to meet all of the adults that are going to the Jamboree from the UK, because they've got a couple of meetings set up, and I'm going to go to one of those and meet them all, and to really just say thank you, because it's an enormous amount of work and emotional energy that's given to that. So for me, I think it's this seeing so many young people together in one place, putting aside any boundaries that are put in place by the world around them, and really showing, bringing to life BP's aim of young people together being able to make a real difference to the world around them. And that's what I think will be the injection for me, to sort of feel that emotional energy.
And I'd just like to remind listeners, and even if there's listeners outside of Scouting that's listening into Scouting Radio today and viewing this afterwards, just remember, these are adults. Some of them might be parents of children that's going on the Jamboree as well, but they won't be with their child. They're going and they're taking maybe 2.5, 3 weeks off to go to the World Jamboree off work. That's all their annual leave taken up, just to go over to provide leadership while over in America at the World Jamboree. So it's not really a holiday, but they have fun just as much because they're seeing the kids develop. And that's what Tim is talking about there. Tim, I'm going to ask you one final question. And this is probably the most difficult question that some of our guests have had. If you had one song to describe your scouting life, what would it be? And it doesn't have to be a scouting song.
One song?
Yeah.
Well, that's a wicked question to ask, isn't it? Just for listeners, I just need to note that Justin had sent me a list of these are the areas we'll talk about, just to make sure you're comfortable, and he didn't put that on the list. I just want to be absolutely clear
I didn't actually.
that he didn't put that on the list, and I'm only saying that to give me some time to try and think of some songs. Yeah. It's just a unashamed filler for this bit of the activity. As you know, that I'm really interests me, and I'm a bit bamboozled, and I'm just trying to think of, because for me,
or is there any song, Tim, that you've ever heard that brings back memories of a camp?
It's because scouting is about this emotional connection to people. Mm-hmm. It's about people and places and understanding that emotional connection. It's not about the physical activities for me. It's about this emotional activity to people, and it would have to be a campfire song. I think that would be so would have to be a campfire song for me, because when you see people together doing things, I think that really does it for me. So I'm a bit stuck, but it's got to be a campfire song, and
I had Colin Walker saying that it's Skingangooli, no matter where he goes.
That wouldn't do it for me. That wouldn't do it for me, I don't think. I think it's Have You Ever Seen a Zombie Come to Tea? I think would do it for me, because whenever I do that with whether it's adults or kids, and you see people joining in doing the most ridiculous things, but feeling about they're doing it together, and something that anybody can do, they can all join in, and it doesn't matter how good or bad you are, whether you can sing or not, whether you can do anything in time or not, you can be part of it and join in, because it is just so bonkers. And I think that would probably do it for me.
Tim, it's been great having you on Scouting Radio and clearing up some myths that's been involved in the media, and hopefully we can demystify some things. Finally, before you go, is there any message that you'd like to give to scouts around the world?
I think it's a really clear message. I think for me, I think whatever you do, wherever you are, just extend that hand of friendship to other people. Take the things you learn in scouting and spread them around your life, whether that's in scouting or outside scouting, because I truly believe that the power of young people is that it can change the world and make it a better place. And I think that's what we all have to hold on to.
Tim, great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, I'm sure listeners will come up with questions in the future to ask you. So hopefully we can do something similar again.
I'll be very pleased to come back and chat to you again, Justin.
Great. Thanks a million for talking to us, Tim.
Scouting Radio. Who said scouting was just for geeks?
Simon's standing very scared in the corner here. Would you actually eat any of these, Simon? It's gone! Simon has eaten a mealworm. It's got to be growing inside him. Will it grow inside him?
Yeah, huge. It'll turn into a plurry big snake, mate.
Scouting Radio.
Great to have Tim Kidd on Scouting Radio, and loads of comments coming in after that broadcast about what the future holds for Scout Association. And so people, Judith said, so people will volunteer based on what the logo looks like? Sorry, people volunteer on opportunity, the amount of time they can give, and what if they enjoy it, not based on what the logo looks like. The current one is fine, no need to change it, says Judith. I think people are reading too much into this logo change, listeners. But anyways, that's my personal opinion. Baden Powell was the one who designed the base of the logo. If you change the logo, then you will lose the connection to Baden Powell. A bad decision, in my opinion, says Joe Marvin. Carl Mulcahy says it should have been left alone. Andrew said something similar. Andrew Warmington. Tom Houlihan, why change it? It's the world standard, literally. It ain't broke, don't fix it. They're not changing the World Scout badge, Tom. Let's rephrase that again. Penny Haynes says, I wouldn't change it. This is going on, the one that's been leaked around the internet, listeners. And is it the right one? We don't know yet. But anyways, it has been posted a few times. I'm really hoping that it's not the actual one, says Anastasia Enticott. It's not, it's blooming hideous, she says. Well, you know what? There's other things, as Tim mentioned, that is happening with Scout Association to increase membership, to attract more people into scouting. And you know what? I think that's a brilliant thing. Richard Scout, 44% of respondents said they were more likely to send their children to Scouts because of this logo. Do they really want members that are only coming because of the new logo, says Richard? Well, you know what? If it's attracting new members, you know, we have to change the image of what is scouting, Richard. That's my thoughts there. Studio@scoutingradio.com, or keep the comments coming in on our Facebook tweet or thread, or on Twitter, twitter.com/Scouting Radio or @Scouting Radio. Simon says, I think the Scout Association should bear in mind that if they change things too much, the general public will stop being able to identify who you are. You have a strong branding, why change, said Simon Morley. Well, it's there, and the necker's not changing. Things like, if you ask listeners what are the common things that identify Scouts, we haven't changed. The Scout Association aren't changing anything. They still have the World Scout badge. They still have the same uniform and everything. It's just the association name logo is changing. The badge is an iconic part of Scouting, recognised around the world. Let's not change the risk of changing the image again. It's not the World Scout badge. And I think Tim answered that clearly enough. Studio@scoutingradio.com. That is our email address. Coming back with some more of your comments right after this.
Ladies and gentlemen,
please welcome 30 million Scouts. One station, Scouting Radio.